is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Verbal Commitment on the Kansas City Sports Network, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here with Ryan Wallace from GoPowerCat.com and 24/7 Sports to talk about the world of local recruiting, from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. I can tell you we're really excited about this project. Ryan and I, worked together for quite a while at 24/7 Sports, and we spent a lot of time together on the road over the last several years, scouting and evaluating players kind of across the state of Kansas and in the Kansas City area. And we look forward to helping you get to know these players and telling you their stories. And so with that all said, Ryan, how are you doing tonight?
I just can't believe this kind of dream became reality here, Kevin. This idea that we kind of had in the back of our heads, and now we've got, the Kansas City Sports Network brand behind it. It's amazing to be here. And I think you painted the perfect picture. I mean, this is going to be a show that touches just about everything for anybody. If you're just a recruiting, savant that is interested in K-State, this is for you. Jayhawks, yes. Tigers, yes. Kansas City, of course. That's our backyard for Kevin and I. And then, we're going to stray into Kansas. We might even stray towards St. Louis, too. So if it deals with high school sports, specifically football, if it deals with recruiting, then you're going to want to tune in.
Later in the show, we will have Matt Zollers, Missouri's top-ranked quarterback commit since Blaine Gabbert, who started for the Tigers before becoming a top 10 pick. He turned out pretty well for the Tigers. But before we do, let's take a look at Missouri's class as a whole. Ryan, typically when a school has a big year on the gridiron, you really see that payoff in that next recruiting class, right? Like, everybody thinks you're going to sway a bunch of people in December and January after that year. That's not usually how it works. It's usually that next sort of full cycle. And when you look at Missouri's class right now, they're really making the most out of last year's 11-win season that ended with that Cotton Bowl win over Ohio State.
No doubt. I mean, Drinkwitz and that staff have just been killing it. I don't know. He made a joke at SEC Media Days that Dennis Dodd was the only one that had him on the hot seat, which is funny. But, I mean, there was some speculation around just how hot that seat was. And I think when you combine the season that they had in Columbia a year ago and what he's doing on the recruiting trail, I would say things have rapidly cooled off. And I mean, to start the class off with a guy like Zollers, right? That you mentioned, we'll talk to later. The number one recruit in the class, not just in terms of when he committed, but still in terms of his ranking, and it just continues to rise. It sounds like he had a pretty strong performance at the Elite 11, and then they've done exactly what you would hope when you get a major commitment, with especially at quarterback, which is built around him. I think, the majority of their top 7 are all offensive players. I think 6 of the top 7 are either offensive linemen or wide receivers, guys that, he's probably been directly involved in getting them to commit. And then you go down the class. And I mean, Kevin, as I throw it back to you, there are a number of guys even, let's ignore some of the top rated guys, right? Jack Lang is a guy that obviously had a lot of Missouri folks excited. Highly rated kid out of St. Louis, and they got Lamont Rogers as well. But you go deeper down this list, you see why it's 13th right now in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. Jason Dowell, really good, strong wrestling background defensive tackle that I loved seeing his tape coming out of Althoff Catholic in Illinois. They get him. He's kind of midway down the class. And then 2 guys that I know well from covering Kansas State, Keaton Jones out of Coffeyville, is their kind of second to worst rated commit, and Jason King out of DeSmet, which is just a powerhouse in St. Louis, another guy that had plenty of Power 5 attention. I mean, Kevin, when Keaton Jones is your second lowest guy, and you had staffs at Alabama and Lord knows who else that were seeing the potential in him, I think that Missouri's got to be just ecstatic about where they are kind of halfway through this cycle.
Yeah, I think you saw Keaton Jones just before I did, and then we saw him, another time at a second camp, a year ago.
Yeah.
And the thought line then was, this is an SEC-type kid, like from a body standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint. You want to think of big guys that can move, Keaton Jones is one of those guys. He's got just monstrous dimensions from his weight to his arm length to the strength to the 40 time that he runs.
Right.
All of those different things. He's a really raw guy, Ryan, and we've talked about that. He was a defensive tackle prospect when we first saw him, now an interior offensive line guy. But in terms of just raw clay and building out an SEC caliber lineman, Keaton Jones has what it takes.
No doubt. I mean, he's still a project. I mean, you and I would be the first to tell anybody about that. But again, when you just talk about traits, there's a young man that, again, if you're tuning in and you're just a fan of Kansas City, this is a name you might know. If you're a Missouri Tigers fan, this is absolutely a name you know. But when I look at Keaton Jones, I don't know if maybe he's got quite the mobility. We'll find out at the next level. Certainly a lot of Armand Membo sticks out about just when you see him, the raw power that he plays with, right? And athletic for his size. We'll see if he can go out to tackle like Membo did from Lee Summit North. But either way, I think a really good get for Missouri in terms of kind of the long-term development there. And then, Kevin, when you look at some of the skill players that Missouri is bringing in this class, again, Zollers is the guy that really moves the needle and creates headlines, but he's able to go out and land some star receivers and do so, fairly quickly after they were official visitors on the campus there in Columbia. Sean Terry, Olubade, and then a guy, Javon Boggs. When Gus Malzahn and UCF go after a receiver, especially one that's kind of in their neck of the woods, to me, that's kind of a stamp of approval that you're pretty legit. And Missouri goes down there and swipes him away from the Golden Knights, a team that was trending up.
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one, perfect comparison, but Boggs is a guy I thought shared a lot of similarities to a Kansas City guy from a couple classes ago in Jaden Doss, in terms of being just a really high-level after-the-catch guy because of how thick he is, the combination of sort of the power along with the athleticism. It's so interested in these Missouri wideouts because I think they're all so different from each other that it's easy to see them all finding roles there. Olubade, for being such a highly rated guy, I don't know that he's like the jump off the page, freak athlete that you see at those spots sometimes. And in last year's class, they got Courtney Crutchfield, who is an incredibly explosive guy and was that kind of guy. Olubade, he's 6'1", but Ryan, he may be 6'7" in terms of his arm length and everything. A guy with 35-inch arms, and if you aren't a fan of the NFL draft, 35-inch arms, when people say your offensive tackle has 35-inch arms, they're like, okay, that's good length. That's really good. And so for a 6'1" wide receiver to have 35-inch arms, he's also got a hand that's bigger than 10, just big mitted, technical route runner. He's going to have a really good role there. And he, like I said, he's different than Boggs, who's kind of that run after the catch guy. He's different than Crutchfield, who the 24/7 Sports comparison for him was CeeDee Lamb, who was kind of a big, athletic, explosive. He's, I think they use the phrase, he's not covered even when he's covered type of guy. And so when you add in all of these guys and somebody like Zollers running the show and throwing those guys the ball, this is a really impressive group of skill position guys from Missouri. And
it's an embarrassment of riches, but also, if you're looking at something that's going to be intriguing kind of moving forward, obviously it's never a bad thing to have this problem, but it is going to be a problem nevertheless. As you bring up Crutchfield, you bring up another Kansas City guy like Joshua Manning, and now you add this group to the mix. Somebody's going to get left off the field, or at least maybe not get the touches that they feel like that they should be getting. So it's going to be up to, Drinkwitz, more the rest of that staff to make sure they can try and keep as many of these guys happy, because as Drinkwitz has said, one of the keys to their season last year was the depth that they were able to play with. Keeping that depth happy, and keeping that depth active, that will be kind of the test for this staff moving forward once these guys sign.
And we brought up Zollers multiple times. It all kind of starts with him, though. He's what you want as a quarterback in today's game, and we'll talk with him a little bit about this, but he's kind of a springy guy, athletic. He can move around, he can make plays off schedule. You can see the multi-sport background on that tape. Just a really impressive kid, I think, to have sort of as that quarterback in waiting, as you will, over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch him, I think they're a little bit different, but I also think that there are enough similarities, especially where they're from. I mean, they're both basically from the Philadelphia suburbs. There are some sprinkles of Will Howard in that game, a little bit. Just the arm strength, the way that it pops, the way that they seem to command the field. I'm not direct comparisons, but I mean, I think you can draw some similarities there. But wow, I mean, you talk about the rise of Zollers, a kid that has just, I don't want to say come out of the woodwork, because last November over at 24/7 Sports, he was always kind of a top 200, top 250 type player. But again, when you start to see the likes of Georgia get involved and Alabama get involved, his recruitment really took off, and credit to Missouri staff for not only noticing it, but jumping in, getting him locked in early. And they might have a kid that when it's all said and done, he might sign as he's top 50, top 40 right now. He could be top 30, top 25 if he and Spring Ford deliver the kind of tape that I think a lot of people are expecting them to this fall.
I 100% agree. And we're going to talk with Missouri quarterback commitment Matt Zollers here in a minute. But first, I want to tell you about our friends at Home Field Apparel. Home Field has more than 150 colleges and growing to choose from Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri to the Banana Slugs of UC Santa Cruz. There are some really deep cuts out there in Home Field's gear for a lot of programs. I've actually got like the Tulane shirt with like the angry green wave on it, classic. And there are nearly 40 Missouri items to choose from, including some really classic logos and some retro looks. So check out homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code Mizzou24 for 15% off your first order, and we'll be right back.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast. Joining us is Spring Ford quarterback and Missouri commitment, Matt Zollers, one of the top 40 overall players in the country. Matt, thanks for swinging by.
Thank you for having me.
Matt, you committed to Missouri in April, and you took like a whole bunch of unofficial visits leading up to that. You visited your local schools there in Pennsylvania. You hit Pittsburgh, Penn State. You went down to SEC country, and you hit Alabama and Georgia. So what was it about Missouri, especially at the end of kind of all those visits, that made you say, hey, that's the place where I want to be?
Overall, what I was looking for in a school was how I felt I connected with the coaching staff and all the players that are there, and like the players that they're recruiting, like could see myself like being friends with all those boys, because that's who I'm going to be with for the majority of my school. Like that's who I'm going to hang out with most of the time. So I just felt most comfortable there. It happened faster than everywhere else, and it was just like smoother, and I felt like I saw myself at that school. So that was ultimately like the main reason.
Matt, when you talk about kind of clicking with the coaches and the players, were there any particular coaches or players that helped make that kind of smooth feeling so comfortable, being so fast? Because Missouri, out of the finalists that Kevin mentioned, you've got Pitt and Penn State. I mean, staffs that knew you for years, and yet Missouri is farthest from home, and you end up clicking with them so quick. What was it about Missouri specifically that you think maybe helped lead to that?
It's probably like the way that Coach Drinkwitz and Coach Moore communicate, and even how they coach. Like how they are on visits is the same how they are during practice. Like I've talked to some of the players before, and they're not just like saying that just to say that. Like they don't change when you get on campus. Like, I know some coaches like just put on their best show for the recruits and stuff like that, but it's not like that here. And I've talked to the players, like, and how I'm talking about right now is like how I want it to be. Like, it's not just football. Like, I can talk to them about other stuff like that too. But when we talk about football, I just felt like Coach Drinkwitz has an offensive background. Coach Moore is crazy offensive minded. So I just felt like that was the best spot for me.
Did you look at Brady Cook's development at all and everything? Because obviously, he had a 2020 It wasn't bad. He took a little heat for it or whatever. But, man, he took a major jump last year and was one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. I guess, could you talk a little bit about, sort of what you noticed there and what you saw, and maybe if you see anything that could apply to you?
I think that definitely a big piece in that is Coach Moore. The type of how he calls plays is definitely very helpful for a quarterback. He likes to get the ball into the playmaker's hands as fast as possible. And obviously when you have a person like Luther, it helps out a lot. So, but no, definitely just like the stuff they do in practice. Coach Drinkwitz walks around and he throws in comments here and there, like little stuff like that to help. But yeah, definitely the way they practice, I feel like definitely helps develop, because they look over in the film room, then they go on the field and they go back into the film room, look over it again. So I feel like that's just like the best way to be developed. So
Matt, I wanted to stick with Coach Moore a little bit and this whole offensive game plan that he's drawing up in Columbia. When they were pitching you on their fit in their offense, do you feel like you can just kind of transition what they've already created with Brady, or do you feel like maybe Coach Moore mentioned some things that you could do that could potentially open up that offense even more?
It's just how they run their offense. They utilize their quarterback a lot. Obviously, like, everyone's going to use their quarterback, but I'm talking about like different levels of throws, quarterback design runs, like stuff like that. And I feel like that's how I play best, when it's like the offense is totally around the quarterback. And I feel like that's how this offense is. So obviously, like I said, they get it to the playmakers fast. But it's not just they only get it to Luther. Like, they spread the ball out last year a lot. And their run game was crazy good too. So it's definitely like a balance of everything. So I feel like that's the type of offense that I really enjoy playing in. And when I saw that, it was definitely a plus.
Coaches like players who can make plays kind of off schedule. You're not always going to block everybody. Receivers aren't always going to be open when they're supposed to be open. And one of the things that stands out about you on tape, you've got this multi-sport background, right? You played basketball, you golf, 4 or 5 times a week? I think you said you've got a little bit of that just sort of multi-sport thing to you when you're playing quarterback, in terms of you can go out and play the position almost like a shortstop or do different things, as plays break down. Do you see that as a strength of yours? And how has maybe that multi-sport background paid?
Definitely. Everything I do, like even in golf, like I try to make everything as athletic as it possibly can. Like when I play golf, I don't really think. I just go up and swing, because I feel like that's as athletic as golf can get. And I feel like that's what I kind of try to do playing quarterback, like move, like specifically like pocket movements and stuff like that. I don't want to be a robot. I try to make everything as athletic as possible, because that's like when I am the smoothest, when everything's not like, when I'm not moving around like a robot, like, when we do drills, when I do drills with my quarterback trainer, I like to like have something that I don't know is going to happen. Like before we start the drill, it's not like he's going to, I'm coming through this gap every time and you have to move here. I like him you go this way, I have to make a move, stuff like that.
You have to improvise.
Yeah. So I definitely work on that. So, but basketball definitely helps a lot, because you never know what's going to happen during basketball. Of many different options like that. So definitely playing multiple sports really helped me.
Matt, you were the first pledge for this class for Missouri. Was it important for you to kind of lock yourself down with the program early and kind of be a foundational element to Missouri's class? And I asked that because, again, it seemed like your recruitment was really just starting to take off. Like, it seemed like maybe there were even some bigger offers that could have been on the horizon, and yet you were like, I want to go ahead and lock it down. I mean, did that ever cross your mind of, I kind of want to be an early part of somebody's class?
It's not as like I wanted to be. Like, if there was people committed, like, it wouldn't really change anything. But I had full trust in Coach Drinkwitz. They were telling me even before I was committed that this is a chance to get the best class in school history. And they're not lying, obviously. I had trust in them, and they pulled through. So, but it wasn't like a big factor. Like, I wanted to be the first person to commit here. This is just where I ended up feeling most comfortable and where I wanted to be. So that's how it happened.
In this recruiting class, you guys already have a couple really good offensive tackles. You got Donovan Alubade here recently. Javon Boggs, the wide receiver from down in Florida. When you look at kind of how they're building out the offense in this class, what are your relationships like with those guys? And are there still some guys out there that you're kind of recruiting and trying to get to join the class?
Definitely. I feel like I have great connections with all the guys. We have a group chat, so we talk a decent amount. And then like I've been playing like the new college game with some of the receivers. Yeah, I played with Marquise the other day.
Okay. Who won?
And then the people that were still Andrew Babeloa, I think he's committed at the end of July or early August, sometime soon. And then Andrew Olish, he's a tight end, committed to Michigan. He's from like 45 minutes away from me. Like, he just committed, but
still staying in his ear.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, along those same lines, like, I wanted to touch on this, and Kevin, you took me down that path perfectly. There was an interview you did, Matt, with 24/7 Sports with Tom Loy out at the Elite 11, and at that point, he was kind of asking you the same thing of like, who were kind of some top 5 targets of yours? And I went back and watched that interview. Missouri, you guys ended up getting 3 of the 5 that you named. What have you found to be kind of the secret? Because evidently you might have a future career as a recruiter here. So what's kind of your secret in terms of selling Missouri?
It's when I talk to them about schools, obviously being committed first helps, because I was telling them from the jump, like, if they have any questions about any other schools, I'm not going to lie to them. Like, I'm going to be straight up and honest, like, what I saw at this school compared to what I saw at Missouri and why I chose Missouri. And I'm not going to lie about Missouri either. Like, obviously I really want them there, but I'm not just going to ruin their future just to get them here.
Sure.
So I was being straight, transparent with them. And I was kind of talking to them. I wasn't talking to them as if I was recruiting them. I was talking to them more as friends, because that's like ultimately what I wanted to be. Like, I didn't want to just be like, oh yeah, I recruited him, I'm never going to talk to him again after he commits. Like, I wanted to keep the constant connection. So specifically with the receivers, we were on the same official visit, me, Javon, and Donovan. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I texted them a lot before that, but on the official visit, I was with them literally 90% of the time. Just like talking. It wasn't even like, most of it wasn't even about football. We were just kind of talking. And I feel like that kind of helped make them feel more comfortable. And then Sean, me and Sean talk all the time, probably literally like every single day. We play the new game a lot. I played him last night, but yeah, I just want to keep constant connection. That was probably like my main point to get at.
Now I know you're enrolling early, and you talked about one of the things that you really took away from Elite 11 was kind of the note taking part of it. Was that like a meeting or a film thing in terms of taking notes? And will that help you enrolling early and kind of adjusting your process a little bit and being ready for when you get to Missouri?
So the note taking part I was talking about is there was this one portion where we got into 4 or 5 stations. They had speakers come in for one of the stations. The other station was like how to manage your Instagram account. Another station was like managing time. And then the other station was football stuff, like how to read a defense, stuff like that. And then there were speakers from the Texans offensive coordinator. He didn't come in, but he like talked over a Zoom call. So like taking all that in, like specifically like the time management, because that's going to be a big part of everything. I feel like that's probably going to be the biggest change is managing my time, because I'm not going to have as much free time, obviously. And also like the learning part, they kind of gave us like strategies. So
Sure. Matt, I'm curious, and again, you can kind of go into as much or as little detail of this as you want, and it could depend on how important it was to you. But, in this world of NIL, I'm curious, coming from a recruit of your stature, right, of somebody that has really ascended from, a top 250 player to a consensus top 50 to 40 player, what's that process like in terms of how schools, not just Missouri, but in your recruiting process, how was NIL navigated? Was it at the forefront of some places, and how important was it at the end, for you?
They all talked about it a little bit, but I don't really care about the money. If I'm good enough, wherever I went, they were gonna pay me, and the money that I'm gonna make in college is like what? Like it's gonna be like 1 or 2% of what I would possibly make if I'd make it to the NFL, and that's my ultimate goal. So
right.
I wanted to go somewhere where I felt like I had the best chance to go to the NFL. So it wasn't a big part at all.
Real quick, putting you on the spot, predictions for Missouri this season. How do you think they'll do?
I think they're going to win the SEC championship and make a run in the playoffs.
Hey, Matt, I got some fast, rapid questions. Are you ready? We're going to hit these fast and furious.
All right, yeah.
Best Philly cheesesteak, where can you find it?
My best cheesesteak is at my country club. That's my favorite cheesesteak.
There you go. All right, so you got go local. Okay, how about St. Louis and Kansas City? Columbia's in between, but you're going to go more toasted ravioli, or are you going to go Kansas City barbecue once you move into Columbia? Okay. Drake or Kendrick?
Drake.
How about, so Pennsylvania, for those that don't know, huge quarterback legacy. You can only pick one: Johnny Unitas, Joe Namath, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, or Jim Kelly?
Dan Marino.
Oh, I like it. Final question: best or your favorite Missouri uniform combination head to toe? Give it to us.
Black script helmet, the black helmet with gold script, black jersey, and then white bottoms.
Dangerous. That's
clean.
Clean. That is a dangerous look. Thanks again so much for joining us, Matt. Thanks to the rest of you for watching the Verbal Commitment podcast on KC Sports Network. Leave us a like if you like it. Leave us a 5-star review. And until our next episode, everyone take care.